Hey guys, welcome back to Greatest Access Tutorial Ever. I'm your host Jeremy. This is episode 2.1. So in 2.1 means we're in the category of forms, and this is the first episode in forms, which is your basic forms for beginners. So this is just an intro course on how to do forms for Microsoft Access. Let's get started. I hope you have your coffee. I have mine. Let's go. Okay, so here's what we're going to be covering in this course. What are access forms, how to make a new form, basic parts of the form, and different form views. So what are access forms? Access forms are the primary way to view and interface data within Access itself. So if you think about, again, I keep using Amazon or Google as examples. In their case, the way you're interfacing with that data is through a web browser, right? So you get on your web browser, your web browser actually starts talking to their web server, and then their database servers, they feed you back information from a database formatted to fit a web browser. Well, in Access, it doesn't work like that. The forms are within Access themselves. So you build the form, which is kind of like a web page, and then that lets you interface with the data that Access is connected to. But forms can look way different in Access. So with that said, how do we make an Access form? So I'm going to switch over to our database, our sample database. Now, this has a table that has been pre-made from an earlier episode, episode 1.1, which is table beginners. If you did not watch that episode and you're brand new to this channel, I would highly recommend you watch episode 1.1 first, that explains database tables. But for now, in case you don't know, we made a table called tabled colors, TBO colors, and we just have some entries in here, right? So we went one through, we have 7 colors actually, but in my example from the previous episode, I deleted one of the primary keys just to show you how they don't ever repeat if they're an auto number. So anyway, we only have one table so far in our database. So if you have that, go ahead and open your database. Now, let's make our first form. So what we want to okay, I was just checking. What we want to do here is we want to go to the Create ribbon, and we want to, you'll notice that there are now controls over here for form, form design, and blank form. So what's the difference? So let me show you this first one here. If we just go to form, right, and I click form while I have a table highlighted, you'll notice that I have this kind of ugly looking screen right here. So what is all of this stuff? Like, what are we looking at here? And I'll show you in one moment. So there are multiple parts of a form that you may not be able to see. So the basic parts of a form in Access are the header, the detail, and the footer. There's only 3. So you should be familiar, if you've ever used pretty much any word processing or PowerPoint or whatever, a header and a footer. The same thing is going to exist in forms. So on this particular form, we're going to go to design mode. Now, in design mode, you get to start to see parts of what this form that we just made is called. So you'll notice right here, this is called the form header. This is called the details section here. And down here we have a form footer, this size 0, so there is no form footer. And notice how if I move my cursor over, I get this little resize icon. I can move it over, and now I have a form footer. Now let's look at this form back in form view. Now you can't see, but there is a footer down here. There's some blank space here, and then at the top there's this form header. This is a very generic, very baseline table. I'm sorry, form rather, but we've made our first form. So if we hit save, Control S, it's going to ask me, what do I want to save my form as? Now, like we saved our table in the last episode with the prefix of TBL, this time I would like to save the form FRM, and I'm just going to put colors. So this form is form color. So if I close it, I can see I now have a table called table colors and a form called form colors. So let's double click it again. And there we have it. We have the form basically displaying the data from the table. Now let's kind of explore a little more. So to kind of emphasize, make this look really call out the header, the detail, and the footer, just to let you know more of what they look like. So I'm going to go to right click again, or I can go to view design mode, or I can go to bottom right corner. I just need to get to design mode on this table, and I'm going to emphasize what these look like. Now you don't have to worry about what I'm doing right now. We'll cover this in future episodes, but I'm going to make this font bigger, and actually I'm just going to type in here, this is the form header. I'm going to change the color of this form header to be black, and I'm going to change the font to be white, and actually it's going to be size 22. I'm going to get rid of this little picture. This is just default stuff that Access gives you when you first start. And then the same thing here. I'm going to highlight the form footer. As you see, I've clicked the bar here. I'm going to go up to this fill, and I'm going to make that black. And now I'm going to add my first element. We'll get to these in future episodes, but I'm going to go to form design, and I'm going to add what's called a label. Okay, now of course it starts usually with black text as default. I'm going to make it white. I'm going to make it much larger. Oop. Now here in the detail area, I've highlighted that. That's the third part of our form. I'm just going to highlight it, and I'm going to fill it with kind of a red. All right, now what happens when I say look at this form in form view? There we have it. Now our form looks a little more, or way more colorful now, but you can see the parts really stand out. So as we saw in our PowerPoint slide, we have a header, detail, and a footer. Well, here it is, header, detail, footer. Now, forms can get extraordinarily complex. This is just the beginning. There are different form views which give you wildly different looks on how to display your data. So, for example, this is what I would call a normal form view. There's also called data sheet and continuous views. So what does that mean? What does that mean? So if you'll remember, now we're back in our access form and our database, and I closed that form. If you'll remember, our table has 7 colors in it. If you look and you open this form, now this form is showing that table, showing the data that's in that table. It only has one color, which is blue. So what's going on? Well, we're currently in what's called like single item or single view form or normal. There are these little tiny arrows down here. If you click, and can you see? Yes, way down here, there's some little arrows. There's a single arrow going to the right. If you click, now we've switched to color number 2. And you know what? I'm going to go back in design view to make this much larger so we can see what's going on here. So let's do this. I have switched the font size of the color. Sorry, I can't see the thing. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so let's go back to normal form. Okay, now we have a larger font. So you'll notice it has the ID. That's one of the fields that are in our table. So if we switch to table, that's the ID field, the color name field. Here's the ID field and the color name field. So that's how a very basic form works that's tied to a table. So you'll notice it only shows one at the time. I have ID, color name blue. If I hit this little down arrow over here, I go to the next record in the table. So that's just like, again, looking back at episode 1.1, going to the next record in the table is going to the next card in a Rolodex or the next card in an index card container. I've looked at one card, I've now switched the entire thing to the next card, which is ID number 2 and yellow 2. And so I can keep hitting these records, and I keep flipping through the tables, or sorry, the records rather, until I reach the end where I can make a new one if I wish. So that is how your basic single item form works. However, forms can get way more complex. So now let's look, we were in form view, let's look at data sheet view. What does that look like, and how do we get to data sheet view? Well, in our form here, let's go to design mode. Now, we will learn about this in new episodes, but I'm going to have to switch this form over to look at it a different way. Now, right now it says allow Datasheet view is no. I'm going to click that to yes. And I'm going to make the default datasheet. Now I'm just changing the properties or how the different aspects of this form. I'm just changing them around. And so now this is a form. Now you'll notice this form looks exactly like this table. They are very similar in nature. However, the form is displaying the data behind the table. I can do a lot more things on this form that aren't necessarily part of the table, but for now, we'll just keep it like this. So for instance, look, this is datasheet mode. I'm going to increase the font size. Again, this looks exactly like I'm editing a table. However, if I go to design mode, and let's say, you don't have to remember this, but let's say I'm going to add a thing called this is a thing. And then I go to datasheet mode. You'll notice it doesn't appear even though it's on the form. However, if I go to form view, there's that little caption I just made. So now you start to see some differences. There can be things that don't appear in one spot and do in another. Even though this may look like a table, if I go to datasheet view, it's not the same. It looks very similar, but it's not the same. Here I can add fields to my table. Remember what fields are from episode 1.1. It's like if I were to go here and add new columns, I can do that. Even though this form looks like that table, I can't add new fields to that table because this is just a representation. This is the interface to that table, so I can't start just willy-nilly adding fields to a table from a form. The form is meant to display the data in multiple ways. Now there's multiple ways to display the data though. So again, so far we've gone over the normal kind of form view, that's one item at a time. I can use my arrows. Can I use my, oh yeah, I can use my arrows on my keyboard, up and down, left and right, to kind of flip through these records to show me one record at a time. I can use my datasheet view to see lots of records at a time. I can also, let's go to design mode. Right now, I'm clicking this little black arrow at the top means I'm editing the whole form. I'm looking at the properties of the whole form. So I'm going to do this little black dot, and then I'm going to go to default view. I'm going to change that to continuous forms now let's make this label bigger. Now, what do you think is going to happen on continuous mode? Check it out. Once we look at the form, now we have multiple rows that are pretty, and they're not in that ugly kind of data sheet mode, but they show a lot of things like the data sheet mode. Now these are called continuous view or continuous forms, etc. So there's multiple ways to really look at this data behind this form. Now, you don't necessarily have to create a form from a table. You can create a blank form that does absolutely nothing or holds, maybe has some buttons, etc. So for instance, let's go back to our database. Now right now we have a form that's tied to or bound to the table colors. So if I open this form and it's bound to colors, then I'm looking at the colors table. But let's say I want to make a blank form. How do I do that? Too easy. Go to create, go to form design. Now you can also, you'll notice there's a button called blank form. That slaps you in layout mode. I think that is a bad way to start creating a form. Get out of that. Layout mode is useful, but not for creating an existing form in my opinion. It's much better to use layout mode when you already have a form and you need to align columns, you need to align fields to get them perfectly aligned on a form for some reason. I would not suggest creating a new form in layout mode. Instead, I would go to design mode. So let's go to create, form design, and now you have just a blank canvas. And you'll notice it gives us the details section that we saw earlier. You'll also notice, or may notice, we don't have headers and footers. Why not? Too easy. It just starts with detail. If you right-click detail, you can select form header and footer to give yourself headers and footers. And there we have it. And you can resize these. I'm going to go up to a label. And again, I'm just going to make this cool form. This is my header. All right, so let's go format 20. We're going to make the font black. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it down here. I'm going to center it, footer. All right, I want to color this footer. Let's give it a different color. Let's go for thread. And then in the middle of the detail, we're going to do kind of a steel blue. And there we have it now when we look at this form. There we have it, header, footer. This is the detail section. It's going to take up as much as the screen as it can after it's displayed the header and the footer. And again, you'll notice there's nothing here because we didn't put anything in the form. This is a blank form. Let's go ahead and save form blank. This is a blank form that is what's called unbound. So this form is not tied to any particular table. It is kind of like a blank web page. So when I open it, there's just nothing here. This is useful, right? You'll use these all the time in combination with forms that are displaying data, right? And that is pretty much it for this episode. It's real short, real sweet. Follow-on episode, if you're brand new and you're following this, would be episode 2.2, which is where we're going to start diving more into forms, kind of showing various parts of the form and what you can do with them. Hope you really enjoyed. If this video was useful to you, please subscribe, consider subscribing, like it, and click the bell for notifications if you want to know when the new videos are uploaded. Thanks, and have a wonderful day.